observe many South Africans coming to our voting stations. I'm glad you are here this afternoon. Welcome to the media in the house, as well as other South Africans following us on our various platforms online. It's indeed a very good Saturday for our country. I'm going to allow Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Ntate Master Shiburi, to update the country on where we are. Thank you so much, Ntate Shiburi.
Good afternoon. We take this opportunity to update on the start of the voter registration weekend. The voter registration weekend for the 2026 local government elections, which will be held on the 4th of November 2026, has started off on an overwhelmingly positive note in 23,706 voting stations. By 8 o'clock this morning, close to 100% of our stations were confirmed open and operational. Even in those few instances where voting stations did not open on time, the delays were due to community protest that prevented access to stations. The Commission expresses its appreciation to the 48,200 electoral officials for ensuring that the registration operations commenced as planned and that voters get a good experience when they visit their voting stations for applications. The registration stations will remain open until 1700 hours today and reopen again tomorrow at 800 hours and remain open until 1700 hours. The remaining hours of today and tomorrow present an opportunity for eligible voters to register, to update their details, and secure their place on the voters' roll with convenience, because voting stations are an equalizer of opportunity, because with a little bit of effort, each one of us can access a voting station very close to where they read. We wish to remind the nation as follows. By midday, over 330,000 voter registration applications had been processed. Just over 300,000 transactions were processed on the VMD at voting stations, while 30,000 were applications on the online platform. In this regard, it is worth noting that the online platform is available 24 hours a day, so if voters experience difficulty for whatever reason, they could try later at a point where there is no traffic on the network. The voter registration portal remains available for use even beyond the voter registration weekend. Predictably, provinces with population densities account for the majority of the application transactions, with KwaZulu-Natal in the lead, followed by Gauteng and Eastern Cape. Early indications point to young persons as the majority of applicants. Since this morning, our contact center has facilitated and assisted 640 voters through direct contact center queries, alongside over 221 interactions via social media platforms. The Commission expresses its appreciation to the many South Africans who have participated in the registration process since this morning. The turnout recorded thus far reflects an encouraging commitment to democratic participation. We remind citizens of the requirements for registration as well as for voting. On the 4th of November, a voter may only vote at a voting station where they appear on the voters' roll in the ward linked to their place of ordinary residence. For purposes of registering on the voters' roll, voters are reminded to take along their identity document. It could either be a green barcoded ID book, a smart card, or a valid temporary certificate issued by the Department of Home Affairs. The Commission is thankful to the Department of Home Affairs, which is matching our operational hours to enable South African citizens to obtain identity documents for purposes of registering to vote. An address is not a requirement for a voter to register. However, a voter is required to provide same or a description of a place of ordinary residence, so that in registering them, the Chief Electoral Officer may allocate them to the correct segment of the voter's roll. Citizens may register at their registration stations or online through the Commission's online registration platform at register2vote.elections.org.za. As we had indicated, the online registration portal will remain open until midnight on the day the election is officially proclaimed by the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs. The Commission extends its gratitude to political parties, community leaders, civil society organizations, traditional leaders, security agencies, and all stakeholders for supporting the registration process. Once again, we call on all registered voters to verify their registration details online through the IEC app by contacting the Commission's contact center on 0800 11 8000 or by visiting their voting stations today and tomorrow before 1700 hours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, GCO. There we have it, ladies and gentlemen, and South Africans were truly happy with the fact that we're sitting at 300,000 applications on this morning. So we're hoping that this afternoon we'll push the numbers right up to 5 p.m. I'm going to open the floor for journalists in this room, and also as well as journalists or South Africans following us online. The team from social media will advise if there are any other questions. The room is open. I've opened the floor for questions. Any questions, or are we just happy with a good report? I'm going to start this part of the room and then go further down. Introduce yourself and the media house you represent.
My name is Junior Khumalo from Newsroom Africa. The first question to the IEC is on the challenges that you've experienced with these protests that have been happening. Are there specific places where you've experienced these particular protests? We know that in Limpopo, in some areas in Limpopo, there have been some resistance to IEC officials going into those particular voting stations. There was a statement from NetJoins this morning that says that they were working with the IEC to try and ensure that there is safety around everyone who wants to participate. Are they assisting in those particular areas where there have been protests preventing people from voting? And when it comes to demarcation, there has been some outcry from some sectors of society around certain demarcations that have affected where they are going to vote. How is the IEC trying to assist with this? Thank you.
Treaty Jones from ENCA. What do the prospects of a possible extension look like? Has the IEC discussed this, that, you know, in an event whereby not enough people register within the next 48 hours or 2 days, you will extend again, maybe perhaps next weekend? And then secondly, you spoke about early indications pointing to young persons as the majority of applications. Do you have any specific figures? And are these applications coming online, or are they going to the stations as well to register? Thank you very much.
With the SABC. Well, Bullet just touched on one of the questions that I wanted to ask. On your online portal system, have you picked up any glitches? And I know it might be early, but could you maybe talk to us a little bit more about, is there interest, and where are the numbers with regards to the online portal? Thank you.
Let me take one more hand.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm 𝐬𝐮𝐫𝐞𝐿𝐻 Magolego from UFM. What message would you have to people who are reluctant to vote? There are those who say they are not voting because they are tired, they are angry with their political parties. But there's a large group of adults that never voted at all. How would the IEC address them? And there was a situation in Limpopo that I don't recall how you resolved it, where you moved the voting station from University of Limpopo, and there were complaints that you are perhaps trying to frustrate a particular political party by doing so. Are you able to indicate as to whether there's any unresolved disputes or complaints regarding relocation of voting stations? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to allow Tate Shibori to respond to those questions. Yeah.
Thanks, Kate. The first question related to the relocation of the voting station in the University of Limpopo. The issue has been restored. We have access to the facility that we have always used as a voting station. So that little disagreement was resolved, and the station reinstated at the university. The movement or relocation of voting stations is occasioned by two factors. One is either the municipal demarcation board has drawn new ward boundaries which split a voting district. That is the first instance in which we may change a voting station. The second one is that we look at the size of the voting station and see whether we can occasion convenience for the voter by creating a new voting station as a consequence of a new settlement or as a consequence of shift in settlement patterns in a localized area. And it is not a decision that is taken without guardrails and safeguards. It is considered by the PLC at the local level, considered by us here at national office, and eventually approved if it meets the criteria for the establishment of a voting station. The glitches on the online portal experienced so far, our assessment is that the portal is operating in a stable manner. However, because it operates within an ecosystem, a number of factors might affect the voter or the applicant's experience, in which case we ask that people remain patient and try at a different time when the system is less busy. What we have picked up, however, the reports are very few, is that there are people who are experiencing delayed receipt of one-time PINs, which is a measure to authenticate their registration. And because this happens online, it could be because of a myriad of factors, not only indicative that the system has a glitch. Indeed, the preponderance of new applicants today are young persons. However, surprising to us, the majority of the traffic this morning came through voting stations, came through the voting district, came through the VMD that are used at the voting station. We anticipate that the online will peak in hours outside of the voting station because it is not limited by operating hours at the voting station. The Commission will on Tuesday release to the South African public and to the media the outcomes of the registration activity over the 2 days. At that point, the Commission will also make a determination if it is necessary to have a second registration weekend. So far, the only registration weekend that is announced is today and tomorrow. The protest in communities and their impact on voting station. There's just under 16 voting stations that still remain closed owing to community protest. Those have nothing to do with the work of the Commission, and we can only ask those members of the community who have grievances to raise their grievances in a manner that does not impede the exercise of political rights by those among our countrymen and women who are minded to avail themselves of the convenience offered by a station-based voter registration weekend. Indeed, we are working with leadership in those communities to try to resolve those issues, and in all instances, we are supported by the South African police police services. So there are just under 16 voting stations that are affected, and those are throughout the country and not in any localized municipality or province. Thanks. The message for those who opt out not to participate, because this is a registration weekend, we say to them, you may not have a political home. There may be contested that not resonate with your aspirations. All we can ask is that register so that during the campaigns, if there's a party or a candidate that speaks to your issues and you want to vote for them, you've already taken the first step of being on the voters' roll, and you can then participate. It would be a sad day if you find that there's a candidate that raises matters that connects with your aspiration, but because you did not avail yourself of the opportunity to register, you can't vote to influence affairs in your community. The elections that you are going to are for local government, and that is the sphere closest to us. You experience local government from your home. The moment you leave your driveway, either by way of potholes or by way of taps that are not running, by way of robots that are not functioning. So if you opt out, you leave the decision making to those who participate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, DCO. There are no questions on online platform. Looks like I've covered all the journalists in the room. Am I correct? Oh, no. Okay. Thank you, Ceci.
Thank you so much. I only have one question, Commissioner, with regard to your targets. Do you have a specific number of targets today? And if not, how are you going to go about it? Thank you.
Let me check if
It's 𝐵𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿, MDN-TV.
𝐵𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿. Thank you, 𝐵𝐵𝐿𝐵𝐿. Any other hands before we? Okay.
Yeah, I just forgot one of my own questions. Every election, there's people who tell you that they couldn't vote because an employer insisted that it's voting day. What recourse does voters have, and by extension yourselves as facilitators of elections, have against employers who simply have no regard for this process? They just want production to keep going on. At times, they themselves, the employers, would go and vote for their own party while the employees are stuck at work.
Thank you so much. Mtate Chibori, looks like we've covered everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. We do not have any numeric targets. The constitutional obligation of the Commission is to make facilities for as many South Africans who want to either update their details, to change their address, or to register as first-time voters to do so. So we're planning on the totality of the South African population and not so much about a numeric target that we are chasing. The second question on employers and election day. Election day, firstly, and traditionally has always been a public holiday. We are mindful, however, that there may be challenges, especially in the hospitality industry. And for that, ahead of each election, the Commission interacts with employer association, labor association, so that they find one another on the opportunities that are made available to allow employees time to, on that day, exercise their rights to vote. Secondly, we have a period of special votes, which is the 2 days ahead of voting day, for which people may apply, and if approved, they can vote on those 2 days at their voting station or at their places of confinement if they can't come to a voting station, to ameliorate the difficulties associated with people being able to attend physically to a voting station on the day of the election.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. There we have it. Voter registration weekend in South Africa today and tomorrow. Commission, as we observe many South Africans come into our voting stations, I'm glad you are here this afternoon. Welcome to the media in the house, as well as other South Africans following us on our various platforms online. It's indeed a very good Saturday for our country. I'm going to allow Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Ntate Masego Shiburi, to update the country on where we are. Thank you so much, Ntate Shiburi.
Good afternoon. We take this opportunity to